Barra once said you can see a lot by looking around, so I want to walk around Washington, D.C. and see what we see about collectivism and individualism. This is the National Archives of the United States of America, and in it you would find a copy, an original copy of the Constitution of the United States and also the Declaration of Independence. Fittingly, the archives is right on Constitution Avenue. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States are documents that guarantee individual rights. They define what an individual has, what all individuals have, compartmentalized within them, not in a collective, but as individuals. One thing that's really interesting about the National Mall in the United States here is that we tend to memorialize people more than ideas. So what you see in front of you is the Washington Monument. Behind it, the Lincoln Memorial. Over to the left will be the Jefferson Memorial behind the Smithsonian here. All of them are memorials to individuals. We know about the individual first and their story before we know about their ideas. What do we mean by individualism and collectivism? Well, in an individualist society, identity is in the individual, that you first think of yourself as an individual and second as part of a family or a collective. In a collectivist society, your identity is you hold in common with a family, with a government, with a society, with a culture. And so your individualism comes secondary. In a collectivist society, this would just be the Department of Transportation, but it is the Wilbur Wright building, a part of the U.S. Department of Transportation named after Wilbur Wright. This is the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. But more than being about air and space, about the technology, it's about the pioneers of aviation. And Wilbur Wright's a good example. The history of these technologies is told from the perspective of the individual who invented them, like Wilbur Wright and the Wright brothers.
Make their first flight. On December 14th, they made their first attempt. In the process, the brothers have to decide who's going to fly first. And how did they determine that? They flip the coin. Another doesn't get off the pad. They immediately do some rework on it. And meanwhile, the winter is starting to come on. The winds are blowing pretty hard. The cradle goes down the rail and takes off into the wind. So what's the secret to this airplane?
It's not just about Orville and Wilbur, it's about a lot of early pioneers in aviation. More about people than technology, more about individuals.
Flight checks, which are the benchmarks on the way to becoming a fighter pilot. Each pilot then became part of a team of fighting men.
This display is about Steve Fawcett, the first person to go around the globe in a balloon. And notice on the side of the gondola of the balloon are all the names of the individuals who contributed. We even have pictures of some of the clothing worn by aviators. We want to know how they looked. See, in an individualist culture, we can never tell the story of aviation without talking about the individual. This display speaks for itself. And so does this one. Americans like baseball and football and basketball where they can keep individual statistics because individual performance is the key. Soccer is really much more of a community or collectivist kind of a game. Yeah, individuals score the goal and goalkeepers make saves, but generally it's a team sport, and if a team plays together well, you don't need superstars. It's also not a game that's bound by a bunch of rules. It's much more of a fluid game. Here we are in Washington, D.C. watching this game, and you don't have to be too observant to see that most of the people out there are probably not native Washington, D.C.ers. My next walking around project in Washington, D.C. is going to look at universalism and particularism.